we went in to meet with Coach Mangino, and I remember this pretty clearly. He goes, "Well, Todd, I saw your tape this morning for the first time." He goes, "I've seen all I need to see. We want to offer you a scholarship. You know what? I don't care how tall you are. I don't care how fast you are." He goes, "You have the X factor. You have the it, and that's all I need to know." Having a coach say that to you when you know that you're being overlooked because of size or speed or whatever it might be, to say, "Hey, I don't care about any of that. I think you can play football, and I think you can play on my team." I mean, that immediately sold me on the idea of playing for Coach Mangino.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hey, Where'd You Go podcast. I'm your host, Collin Kushner, and we have a super exciting guest, former University of Kansas quarterback, Jayhawk legend. That's factual, by the way. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Todd Reesing. How's it going, man?
Collin, I'm doing great. Really excited to be on the podcast today and spend some time talking with you.
Yeah, man. Likewise. This is an honor. So thank you for carving out the time. You grew up in Austin, Texas. What was your childhood like, and how early on did you get introduced to football?
Yeah, well, I'd say I had a very active childhood. I think I played every sport under the sun. I mean, at one point, I was big into swimming. At one point, it was tennis, and then it was soccer at one point. I always loved football growing up. I mean, mostly just playing, backyard pickup football. Back in the ratty little grass field that we had behind our elementary school. And I think that's really probably where I got my first taste of the kind of style of play that I ended up having in college was playing on that grass field growing up. But it wasn't until later years that I actually kind of settled on football as my primary sport. Because, like I said, every couple of years my favorite sport changed when I was a kid growing up.
That's the beauty about being a kid. You can try different things, see what you like, see what you don't like. At what point did you decide to kind of hone in on football and become a quarterback? Because there's so many other positions you could pick. I don't even know how you choose.
Yeah, when I was playing flag football, I think in middle school, I guess this would have been sixth grade. I actually got beat out by another kid for the quarterback spot. I thought it was the wrong decision, but you got to go with what the coach says. So I ended up playing receiver that year, which is an absolute blast, especially when you're playing flag football, getting to run down the field and everything else. But it was, when I, transitioned to tackle football the next year, and we actually moved school districts out to Lake Travis, where I ended up staying for high school. And that's when I won, my first quarterback job as a seventh grader. And after that, I was kind of hooked on being a quarterback because I had to have the ball in my hands every play. And I just couldn't imagine playing a position where that wasn't the case. So although at that age I was pretty good size, so I was also doing a double duty as middle linebacker on defense. So you can imagine a quarterback middle linebacker in seventh and eighth grade, while I was also the punter and kicker. So I was kind of trying to do it all on the football field in middle school.
That's the funniest part about hearing these childhood stories about football or pretty much any sport, because you play all these different positions, and you're right. As you get older and as you grow, in that sport that you end up choosing, like in what world are you playing middle linebacker? You're playing quarterback, you're kicking. Are you coaching too? Maybe we're throwing a little coaching as well.
It was funny. I wasn't doing any coaching, but I was just laughing about this. I was thinking back. I used to take my shoe off to do the punting and kicking. For whatever reason, I kicked the ball, further and better when I had my shoe off. So you imagine running off the field, having to take your cleat off, run out there, kick it. And a few times I had to make a tackle when the ball was being returned, with one shoe running around the field.
You went to Lake Travis High School. You have a ton of success there. You're named the Texas 4A Player of the Year as a junior, but you weren't getting a lot of interest from colleges. Why was that, Todd? What do you think was going on kind of in that world?
Yeah, Lake Travis at that point in time certainly wasn't a renowned powerhouse in football like it is, now 15 years later. We were 0-10 my freshman year. My sophomore year, I think we went 3-7, and I actually played receiver that year as well as the backup quarterback. which I do think, playing receiver gave me a lot of insight into what receivers are going through, how they evaluate how to get open, how they're reading defenses, which I think translated and helped me become a better quarterback because I played the position. I understood what they were going through. Then we have a good year my junior year, and then go 10-0 my senior year. But I think back about the recruiting process. I think a lot of it had to do with this. Lake Travis wasn't well known on the map, so it wasn't like an area that people were going to be coming for, looking for recruits. I think Austin in general, it wasn't really a hotbed. It was more Dallas and Houston, and it still largely is, I think, for the most part. And I was undersized, right? I'm 5'10" and a quarter in reality. 5'11", 6 foot if they give me a little nudge on the program. So a lot of it was proactive efforts. Back then we were still rocking VHS tapes. So I remember together our own little collage of game film along with a little, 1-page resume. And it was me and my parents, sending tapes out to, anybody that would have us. And so that was really what we were doing, throughout my junior year, trying to build up some sort of an engagement or interest from schools around the country.
You win Texas 4A Player of the Year. Texas is synonymous with football. And when you're tearing it up, I guess from my side, I just thought offers would be pouring in. I guess I didn't really understand that it's also dependent on a lot of the other factors. Is your school having success? Like where are you located? And of course the stuff like how tall are you and the physical attributes, which I think that part is ridiculous.
It is. Well, and there's, it's really tough to evaluate kids at that age because a lot of kids aren't done growing. A lot of them may have very limited experience playing football. Maybe they got recruited in by the coach because of their size or their speed, but they haven't developed the technical skills yet or really understand the X's and O from a mental aspect. So I can understand the challenge with finding, high quality recruits because a lot of guys just aren't there yet, but they turn into great players in college or even after college as guys are still developing into their professional careers. So yeah, I certainly, was had a good idea that I wanted to play football, that I knew I could play at that level. And it was really just a matter of finding anybody to give me a chance. And it was pretty interesting. The first scholarship offer I got actually came out of the blue. I had no contact with Kansas State, which is where the offer was from, back when Coach Snyder was there, who obviously is a legendary college football coach, had a ton of success at K-State. I came home and opened up a letter from Kansas State one day, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you a scholarship." And I hadn't talked to any coaches on their roster. So I, called up their coaching staff and I was kind of curious, like, "Hey, why'd you send me the offer?" I'm thankful, I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. And so that was my first, opportunity to obviously play in college. So at that point, I knew I would be able to, at a minimum, go to Kansas State. And then after that, I think that's when I started to have a lot more engagement with other schools. And that was kind of the spring of my junior year.
You ended up going to the University of Kansas to play under former head coach Mark Mangino. Todd, what do you think Coach Mangino saw in you that a lot of the other schools didn't see?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I essentially, asked that same question, or he offered up his answer to that question would be a better way to describe it. It was actually after I had visited Kansas State for a summer mini camp with high school players. And one of the Kansas coaches had called me when I was on my way to go visit Kansas State and said, "Hey, we got your tape. We'd love for you to come on by. Coach Mangino would like to meet you." So my parents and I drove down to Lawrence, and we went in to meet with Coach Mangino. And I remember this pretty clearly. He goes, "Well, Todd, I saw your tape this morning for the first time." He goes, "I've seen all I need to see. We want to offer you a scholarship. I don't care how tall you are. I don't care how fast you are." He goes, you have the X factor. You have the it. And that's all I need to know." And so right away, whereas, I talked to other coaches, other schools, like, "Hey, you're not very tall. You're not very fast." Or one coach told me that I was on his B list. We ended up going on to beat them, Texas A&M. That felt good because I grew up a Longhorn fan anyways. But yeah, having a coach say that to you when you know that you're being overlooked because of size or speed or whatever it might be, to say, "Hey, I don't care about any of that. I think you can play football and I think you can play on my team." I mean, that immediately sold me on the idea of playing for Coach Mangino.
That's so cool to hear. I got chills hearing that story because I recently chatted with Brandon Lloyd, former wide receiver, and he actually touched on something, Todd, that I think you can really resonate with. When effort and opportunity come together, that was something that he talked about when he had a career year with the Denver Broncos. When you think about effort and opportunity, because clearly you're giving your best effort and you're doing everything that you can personally control. The opportunity part, unfortunately, is out of it. So what are your thoughts kind of on the effort meeting opportunity component?
Yeah, well, they have to go hand in hand. You can put as much effort as you want into anything, but if you're never given the opportunity to showcase your skill set, showcase your talent, then you're never going to be able to have the culmination of that result in success on the field, success in life, success in your professional career. And Coach Mangino was the one who gave me that opportunity. And there's some other factors that went into my eventually being named the starter and then playing for 3 years at Kansas. And part of that had to do with the fact that unfortunately the starter my freshman year was injured, and then the backup didn't play well, and they ended up pulling my red shirt. And that created the opportunity for me to then compete for the starting job the next year. So there's a little bit of good luck that has to go hand in hand sometimes with the effort that you put in, with all of the practice, all the hard work, so that you can get out there and showcase what you can do.
I guess from a mental standpoint, Todd, at a young age, like how'd you kind of grasp all these different concepts? Because when you're young, I think we tend to be more focused on the game that we're actually playing and maybe not be as strategic. Did you have help from parents, coaches, friends growing up that really kind of helped you dial in, like, hey man, like just keep grinding, keep doing your thing? Or was that something that came from within yourself?
No, I think it was definitely instilled first and foremost by my parents. Both my parents came from very humble backgrounds. Worked extremely hard their entire life to provide for me, my brother, my sister, to give us a better life than they had. My dad, they both were big athletes. Huge fans of sports growing up. My dad was a football player and baseball player and all that. My mom is a heck of an athlete as well. So, my dad would drop anything he was doing to take us out to the baseball field and hit grounders, or go out there and throw the football around and play games in the yard. My mom pushed us really hard academically. She came from a long line of educators in her family. And so mom didn't accept B's, right? So you were either getting an A or you were going to get in trouble. So I think, really that hard work, that determination really started with my parents. I think that then translated into really learning the X's and O's of football with my high school coach, guy by the name of Jeff Dykes, who's still coaching here in Austin. Led Lake Travis to their first state title a few years after I left, and he was really the one that pushed me to be a better football player. Right, he made me become a student of the game. When I'm betting a lot of kids in high school weren't doing film study and sitting down and spending an hour after practice with their coach to understand the game, understand how to read defenses. And he's the one that really, I think, took my game to a whole nother level that created the opportunity for me to get a college scholarship.
So 2007 season, you're at University of Kansas. Dude, you rip it up. 12-1 overall record. You guys win the Orange Bowl. Your stats that year: 3,486 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. When I read all that off to you, man, like what kind of pops into your head, given all the doubts and all the other stuff that happened before leading up to that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned getting chills earlier. I think I just got chills that time thinking back about that. I don't think I ever get tired of talking about that 07-08 season. And obviously, anytime you go back, or I go back to Kansas, or you read one of the Kansas fans, everyone always remembers where they were during the Orange Bowl game, or where they were, watching Kansas go on this, historic run, because the university had never seen anything like that before. But there's so many great memories from that season. And I really think it started in the off season before. We had a lot of really talented players on both sides of the ball. We bring in a new offensive coordinator to start to revamp the offense and go to more of a run and gun spread offense, which I think was a huge a progression forward for me to be able to succeed as quarterback, because I'm not your traditional under center type of quarterback. So having him come in and really call plays and kind of restructure the offense to suit my skill set definitely helped me excel. So so many great memories to go through from that '07 season that, I don't even know where to start.
Well, I think it's so crazy, man, because typically when you look at statistics over at any college football program, any sport, there's usually like pretty close from number one in a specific category to number two. For you, it's insane. Todd, you finished your University of Kansas playing career with 11,194 total passing yards, a school record. The next person is at 6,410 passing yards. That's about a 5,000-yard difference. When it comes to passing touchdowns, similar. You're number one, 90 total passing touchdowns at Kansas. Number two is Carter Stanley. He finished with 37. Your stats are crazy, man.
Well, I guess that goes to show that we had never really run that spread offense that I was talking about before, because we hadn't had a ton of success in the passing game. But yeah, I mean, those stats. It's certainly humbling to hear that. I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish at Kansas, but I think that's also a reflection of all the guys that I played with, of all the coaches that I had calling plays and setting us up for success, allowing us to succeed out there each and every week. So it's great to be able to share those kind of records and share them with my teammates because those are some impressive numbers if you think about it. And it's just it brings me great pride to be able to know that we accomplished so much those few years at Kansas.
It was just cool to see, just from my POV, just as a college football fan, just to kind of read up a little bit and just really just see how you got there. You were given that opportunity, you're given that chance. And I think that's all we really kind of seek out in life. We're putting in the hard work. It's all about getting that chance and opportunity. Is there anything that you would kind of tell a younger version of yourself, or maybe a young man or young woman in the same position that you were, about how to kind of drive through some of the obstacles that you had to?
I think the first thing I would say is you have to believe in yourself. I went into a situation where the guy ahead of me, Kerry Meyer, who ended up becoming my roommate and close friend while we were competing for the starting quarterback job. He was this guy where I come in for off-season workouts and he's blowing past me in every drill. He's 6'3", 225, fast as heck. Everyone called him Franchise around the university. So I'm thinking, man, I got to compete against a guy named Franchise. Like, how am I ever going to be able to win a quarterback job when he's already the starting quarterback? But I didn't let that affect my mindset. I continued to work hard to try to get better, to improve myself physically, to improve myself mentally, understand the offense, learn how to read defenses, so that if I was given the opportunity, I would be prepared to seize it. So I think believing in yourself is something that you always got to focus on, because that's something you can control. There's a lot of things in life and sports, in your profession, that you can't control, but that's out of your hands. If you focus on what you can control and go at it with enthusiasm, with determination, with a lot of hard work, then when you do get that opportunity, as we talk about effort and opportunity, then you're going to be in the best position possible to take advantage of it.
You're so right about the mindset and believing in yourself. I mean, that's so crucial and key for, and it's not just for sport, it's for the business world, for relationships as well. I mean, there's something powerful about having that inner belief. And I know that's what helped me through my life, whether it was, I kind of had similar things. I was a hockey goalie and they're like, you're too small, you're undersized. And I remember my dad would tell me, hey, you can't control that aspect of it, but what you can is come in every day with a positive attitude, work hard, and you'll see where the cards fall for you. And I think the one thing I want to know is, like, that doesn't mean that disappointment doesn't come. It just means that it's just a different way and a different avenue to kind of look at your life and reshape things. I don't know. That's just my POV, man.
Yeah, listen, disappointment's going to be, you play sports long enough. We all have disappointment in sports at some point. We after winning our first 11 games, I lost the last 7 to end my career. So, as a high of a point as there was to start, it was a very low point that culminated also in Coach Mangino, kind of being forced out of being the head coach at Kansas. So I got to experience both. And the low lows, aren't ever as bad as the high highs, are going to be good. So you just got to keep yourself focused on the positive, even when things aren't going your direction. Again, you come back to that mindset. Lean on your teammates, lean on your friends and family for support. Because at the end of the day, whether it's sports or work or family, whatever it might be, the sun's going to rise the next day. You got a new opportunity to improve things, to work, to make things better. And if you keep that kind of mindset, everything's going to be okay at the end of the day.
I love that, man. That's a powerful message. It's a really powerful message I'm excited for people to drop in and listen to this because, again, sports, business, life, whatever it is, it's all so important. You're such a humble guy, and I do appreciate you, talking about how your teammates and how it was a complete team effort, and Coach Mangino, giving you the chance. But Todd, you're considered the best quarterback in school history. When you hear that, what does that bring up for you today in this moment?
Well, it brings up a lot of emotions. Like I said, I try to stay humble and deflect praise when it comes my way and have it be about my teammates, because it was a collective effort. But I think it also is a reflection of all the work that I put in for 20 plus years of my life to get to that moment. I'm extremely proud of what I was able to accomplish at Kansas, to have my name be inducted in the Ring of Honor and sit alongside guys like Gale Sayers and John Hadel. And John Hadel was someone that I become very close with, kind of like a mentor, when he was working at the university and I was playing. And he actually was one of the ones that helped me get to my job after I ended up hanging up my pads for my playing career. So it's extremely humbling to have people mention my name in that same regard. So really proud, really happy that things turned out the way they did.
After Kansas, did you have your eyes set on the NFL, or what was next for you in your mind?
Yeah, I certainly would have loved the opportunity to play in the NFL. I was invited to play in the Senior Bowl. So went down there, great experience getting to compete against some of the best college football players from across the country. Really enjoyable experience. Also just getting to go and visit the Shriners Hospital and be able to go visit kids and have a great time playing with them and showing them some support and love. At the end of the day, I didn't get a call from any of the teams to be picked up after the draft or invited to one of the mini camps. In the back of my mind, I had kind of prepared myself that could be an outcome that was very possible. The person I had a hard time to convince was my dad. He was completely focused that I needed to get a shot at the NFL, and I almost had to be like, Dad, it's okay if it doesn't work out. Like, I'll be all right. But that just showed how much he supported and believed in me, my entire life, all the way up until the end. So when that, unfortunately, didn't happen, and maybe if it had been a few years later when the shorter quarterback had become, in vogue in the NFL, maybe things went differently. But eventually signed on with the Saskatchewan Roughriders up in the Canadian Football League. So was invited to go join up there. Which again was a rather short-lived experience, but I was grateful to get to go up there and experience the wacky Canadian football up north.
Why do you think you didn't get a shot in the NFL? Do you think it was completely related to the height factor, or why from your side of things?
Yeah, I think probably the two biggest attributes when they think about evaluating quarterbacks would be height and arm strength. I don't think the speed thing would. That's not going to be a make it or break it decision for why they pick NFL quarterbacks. Nowadays the dual threat has become somewhat of a more common thing, but 15 years ago it wasn't as common maybe as it is now. So yeah, I think those are probably the two biggest reasons. Nothing I could do about height. And I only got the arm that God gave me, so I wish it was a little bit stronger. It served me well in college, but it certainly probably wasn't as strong as a lot of other guys out there. So I would say if I had to point to two things, it'd be those.
I think the heart and the hard work, and I don't know. I think those oftentimes get overlooked. And again, I'm not an evaluator by any means, but you just hear it on TV all the time, focusing on the physical attributes. And this person's 6'6", and they got the arm and the hand size. And maybe I'm old school, Todd, but what about heart? What about hard work and preparation and dedicating yourself to the craft? I I feel like that means something, and I feel like it should mean more.
Yeah, and again, I think that's you're getting at that X factor, and that kind of I think that's what Mangino saw in me when he watched my team evaluating me back in high school, and I think there's certainly a truth to that because not every first round draft pick in the NFL turns out to be a Pro Bowler. Sometimes you got guys like Tom Brady drafted in the seventh round that become the greatest quarterback of all time. So there's certainly more um, how successful or how great a player becomes beyond height, weight, and 40 time, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. Are they a student of the game? Do they put in the extra hours beyond the mandated practice time? Are they always trying to get better? How do they take care of themselves off the field? Are they trying to improve their athleticism? Are they trying to stay healthy? How do they eat? So I think all of those things go into it, and those are things you can't coach. You can't tell someone what to do when they're not at practice. You can't tell them how to have the right attitude. All of that kind of comes from within. And if you don't have that, I think that's what separates the good from the great. Is all the little things that coaches or anyone else can't make you do. You have to do it yourself. You have to make up your mind that you want to be great, and put in the work day after day after day, even when it's not fun.
On the program's website, under personal, there was something that said football is ... And your answer was indescribable through the modern English language. No spoken words can illustrate the complete inner satisfaction the sport unveils to those who play. That's pretty powerful and poetic, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when you're out there in front of 75 to 100,000 people and you connect on a deep touchdown pass and you throw your hands up in the middle of the field and you hear that roar, like what's better than that? There's not many things on earth or many environments that I think could create a more fulfilling, more adrenaline filled rush than that. I probably liken it to people that do these really extreme adrenaline sports like going skydiving and wingsuit. Like it's extreme. They do it because they get this rush that just once you've got a taste of it, it's hard to let go of, and that's why I think so many people they want to extend their career in sports because they have that competitive juice. They get that adrenaline, that satisfaction. And when you put in so much time, so much effort, your whole life, then to enjoy those handful of kind of pure bliss moments, it really makes it all worth it.
Yeah, man, those moments are everything. God, it's so cool when you're in the middle of a moment in a sport that you've dedicated your entire life to, and you get that satisfaction of throwing that touchdown pass, making that big glove save on the breakaway, man. And it's hard to describe into words. I think it took me years to be able to kind of describe what the game of hockey meant to me, over the years of my life and how it helped through different trials and tribulations, man. It's so cool.
It is, and I think I was talking with someone recently about what are some of the lessons that football in particular, but I think sports more broadly, taught me that have been now translated over to my personal life, to my professional life post football, and there's so many. I think so many of those attributes that you're taught playing any sport growing up, and certainly at a high level, hard work, discipline, dedication, teamwork, collaboration, all attributes that anybody wants in a good employee, that anybody wants in a good friend or a good husband or a wife, whatever it might be. And I think that's why you see a lot of athletes that go on to be very successful in whatever they may pursue after sports, because they know what it takes to be successful. They know what it takes to put in the time, to put in the effort, to be the best at your craft.
Yeah, there's that deep understanding that maybe gives you the edge over somebody else who maybe wasn't as active in competitive sports growing up. I completely agree with that. I know you had mentioned that in the back of your mind, you were prepared to take that next step in your life away from the game of football, but was it hard to move away from it given all the success that you had?
It was extremely hard. In the back of my mind, when I went up to the Canadian Football League, I thought at a minimum I'd be up there for a few years. Whether or not I got a chance to start, again, part of that's going to be, are you on a team that doesn't have a starter, or do you have an all-star on your team who's been playing for 4 or 5 years? And so some of that's outside of your control. But I certainly didn't think that it would be done and I'd be moving on. But I did come to grips with it. I think shortly after I started my first job, it's kind of funny. I got a phone call 2 weeks after I started, after I'd been waiting for 6 months to see if I'd get another offer to go back to the CFL. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks after I start my first job, I get a call from the team in Montreal, wanted to know if I wanted to come back to training camp that year. So maybe if that call was 3 weeks earlier, things would have turned out differently. But I think, as I thought through it, weighing the pros and the cons, and I always knew that there's going to be a whole lot more life after football than there's going to be life in football. And when I thought about it from that perspective, I think it made it a little bit easier to come to grips with it. But, those first couple of seasons when I was watching football instead of playing after college, were tough, right? You just wanted to be out there so bad because you still had that taste of the game in your mouth.
Was there anything in particular, like one thing where that just really, really helped you out during that time?
Yeah, I think there was certainly a bit of like, maybe I just need to take a breather from football because I've been living and breathing it for the last, 10 years or so. But, I think a lot of it was just having a sense of gratitude, being extremely thankful that I had the opportunity to start and to play for 3 years and to play in a couple of bowl games, to have the best season ever at Kansas, and have the kind of success that you dream about as a kid. Most people don't get the opportunity to play in high school, let alone college, and then from there even get on the field and win games. So to accomplish what we did, I think just focusing on that and being thankful that I was able to have that time and have that success. And focusing on the positives and not the negatives that I wasn't playing anymore, because it's not going to do you any good to dwell on what could have been.
Gratitude is such an important piece. It's really amazing how shifting the mindset to a gratitude perspective really does shift things. Again, it doesn't mean that you sit in that disappointment for a while. I think that's part of the process to kind of go along, but having gratitude is everything. And it really does. It's like a mind, body, and soul experience, man. It changes everything for sure.
It does. And I think you can take that to that approach to so many aspects of your life, right? You start each day being thankful for what you have and not focusing on what you don't have. And again, I think that ties into what we were talking about earlier, which is focusing on what you can control. Like, hey, I can't control that I'm not playing football anymore. That's okay. I got a lot of other things in my life that I should be focusing on that can bring me a lot of new joy and fulfillment. Being successful in my career, focusing on being a great brother, being a great son, having great relationships with my friends, and having new adventures in life that have nothing to do with football. Because there's a whole lot of things out there besides sports. I enjoy the time I had, but there's so much more to focus on and enjoy in life as well.
That's such great perspective. And that kind of leads us to where you are now. You're the vice president at Dimensional Fund Advisors in Austin. It's a global investment firm. You've been there for a long time now, man. How was that transition over into the finance world for you?
Well, when you think you're going to play football for a few years, when you end up deciding that that's not going to work out, I kind of hit one of those, well, what am I supposed to do now? And I'd always, focused, really hard on my academics throughout my whole life. I talked about my mom being an A's or bust kind of woman in the household. So when I went into school, I double majored in economics and finance. I actually served as a teaching assistant for one of our finance professors while I was in school, so I could get a few extra bucks in my pocket for spending cash. When I made the decision to move on from football, my first call was to David Booth, who was the founder of Dimensional Fund Advisors. He actually went to the University of Kansas, grew up in Lawrence, down the street from Allen Fieldhouse, and he had a relationship with John Hadel, who I referenced earlier. And John kind of always pushed me, hey, whenever you're done, you need to call David. You need to call David. And it just so happened that Dimensional had just moved their headquarters into Austin, Texas, just down the road from where my parents live. So like the stars were kind of aligning to like, hey, this might be the place you need to go. And I did. I had lunch with David and he was like, well, why don't you come in and interview? So I had to build a resume for the first time in my life. So I went home after that. I'm like, all right, what do you put on a resume? And then interviewed with Dimensional, ended up getting the job. Back in 2011, I guess is when I started. And still at that time, I didn't really know a whole lot about what the company did. Obviously, I was learning and doing my research, trying to understand more about the history of the firm, how they view investing, how they view capital markets. But it was basically like going in and getting a crash course, which I think a lot of jobs are that way, right? College gives you the skill set, the education, to be able to learn, to adapt, and to focus on new endeavors. But you get a lot of that learning done as soon as you join the company.
Yeah, I went to Arizona State and I was under the impression that everything I learned in journalism school, like that's it. Like that's it. That's all you need to know. And then, you get that first job, you're like, wait a second, I don't really know a lot about what's happening and I need to really dive in to just figure this out.
It's so true. And that's, whenever we have, new associates that join the team now, and a lot of them will ask, how, what I did to be successful early in my career to progress to where I'm at today. And what I'll tell them is you've got to have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? You got to go in, be willing to ask questions. If you don't know something, speak up and ask. If people are going to be willing to share their knowledge, share what they know with you. But it's, part of that's going to be on you, right? No one's going to hold your hand anymore. You got to step up to the plate, if you will, and take a proactive mindset. That's how great companies are built, is by everyone taking a proactive entrepreneurial mindset to how can we do things better. We don't always have to do things the same way each and every day, or else we're going to be stagnant. And I think that kind of spirit and mindset and culture, something that I think Dimensional has always had. It's why it's been built up to the global company that it is now, because we had a lot of people, a lot of former athletes as well in my group, that approach the business that way.
How have those football lessons, the good and the bad, helped you in the financial world?
Well, again, some of those attributes that we talked about earlier, I think the discipline and the determination. You gotta, when you get into the real world, again, it's a little bit different than being in school and playing football. It's more cutthroat, right? You got to come to work every single day, every single week, and you have to perform. And a lot of that's going to be based on your personal effort. You got to go above and beyond what you're supposed to do if you really want to excel. So I think having that hard work, that disciplined mindset to be successful, constantly trying to find new ways to learn, to evolve, to grow as an employee are really important. And then I think on the flip side, it's also having a very collaborative, teamwork focused mindset, and that's one of the things that I've always really appreciated about Dimensional, is that it really feels like one team. Right, we're all working towards a common goal, which is to impact as many investors as possible and show them a great investment experience that leads to a happier life, to a better retirement, to fulfilling their charitable goals, whatever their dreams might be, and that we've got a lot of people that are willing to help each other. Right, it's not, hey, I'm trying to outperform that guy, so I'm not going to help him so I can get a bigger bonus. Right, that's not the mindset that we've had, and it just makes coming to work each day that much more enjoyable, right? Because that you're working with someone they'll drop whatever they have to do to help you out, because at the end of the day, it's the results of the team that matter, not one individual.
I love those parallels. It parallels perfectly with football and in your football career. Juice Williams, a former Illini quarterback, was talking about, as a financial advisor, how the certain tasks that he has each and every day helping clients, he kind of channels football jargon and implements that in his mind and how it just translates perfectly into getting the job done efficiently and quickly. I don't know. It was fascinating from my end, and even though I know it's second nature for you guys.
Well, there is, again, like I said, there's so many parallels, and if you take that kind of mindset, it's funny that you mentioned financial advisors, because those are our clients, right? And there's tons of parallels between being a quarterback and being someone that's trying to be the quarterback of someone's finances, to trying to help someone see the field, if you will, and understand and make the right decisions based on a good set of data, a good set of information. So yeah, I think you can carry those sports parallels to just about any phase of life.
To wrap things up, dude, do you miss football?
I do. Yeah. I've actually had a little bit of a kind of a resurgence, if you will, in watching more football the last couple of years. I've kind of, gone back and forth between watching more college, watching more NFL. It's kind of varied over the years. But, this year with this resurgence that the University of Kansas has had, having quarterbacks that are talented and making plays, having an offense that's scoring points, that really has kind of reignited my passion for college football. So I've been really enjoying watching every Kansas football game. I got back for homecoming this past year and got to get up on stage during a pep rally and amp the crowd up. A lot of fun. So it's been a really enjoyable fall and a lot of fun watching the Jayhawks come back to life.
Todd Reesing, University of Kansas football legend. Appreciate the time, brother.
Oh, and it's been a ton of fun and a pleasure. Thank you so much.